Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this advanced English episode with Greg. We're doing a native English speaker conversation. The reason we do these is one, it's fun for us, but also for you because you get to learn about different topics, different things going on in the world. You also get great pronunciation feedback in terms of how things should sound and with connected speech and intonation and prosody. So all of that wonderful jazz going on there. And then you also get listening comprehension practice, which is very important on your way to fluency and interacting with native English speakers. So there are a host of benefits for doing these and for you participating in them and engaging with this content. And don't forget to leave a comment. If you're watching the YouTube video, just drop a comment. Or if you're watching and listening to us on Spotify, then you can go into the community tab and leave a comment or a question in the Q&A. So we welcome that. And today's topic is all about side hustles. So we're going to get into that right after this. All right, so you may have heard the term side hustle before. It's definitely a big buzzword these days, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, side hustles are they used to be something that was unusual. And that's why it was called a side hustle, right? It was sort of something, right? First of all, let's define the term hustle.
Good.
Right? Hustle means to move quickly, right? So if you're playing soccer, your coach might tell you, hustle, right? Move a little faster. So a side hustle is the idea that you are doing something in addition to what you normally do, right? So you're kind of hustling on the side. You can also, hustling colloquially was used for, jobs that were informal, right? Informal jobs. Oh yeah, that's my hustle, is my informal job.
Like, what's your hustle?
Yeah, what's your hustle? So this side hustle is this kind of, it's a job on the side. I like the idea of hustle here because it's like you're moving a little faster than anyone really realizes because you have your normal job and everyone just assumes you do your normal job. But people who have side hustles not only do the normal job, they also do that side hustle. So these are like hustlers, and it's kind of cool. It's like, I think it's something to admire.
Definitely. I think there's definitely a positive connotation associated with the term hustle and side hustle, especially in, the creator economy, in the gig economy even, and just the direction that we're headed in terms of so many people coming up with their own business ventures, their own, product line or whatever it might be, where they're doing something extra, right? That's not expected of them. So where do you think that motivation to do a side hustle comes from?
I mean, I know for me, it started as this sort of insatiable curiosity, right?
Yeah.
I enjoyed what I was doing at my job, but there were other things going on that were also interesting. And I wasn't really ready to leave my job, but at the same time, I wanted to sort of pursue those other interests. And so for me, the first draw of the side hustle was just the opportunity to explore, things that weren't related to my job.
Yeah, I think that's good because, it's about exploring different curiosities, different passions, or learning a new skill. And maybe one way to get you to motivated to learn a new skill is to say, how do I deploy this skill? What can I use this skill for? So let's say you're really into digital art. You might need some sort of motivation to take a course in digital art. Maybe you want to start an Etsy shop or, do NFTs or something like that where you're creating in that way. And it could just be, this insatiable curiosity, as Greg said. I love how you put it that way because it's like when it's insatiable, you cannot ever reach satiety, meaning you never are satisfied. Like after a meal, you reach satiety and you say, okay, that was a great meal. But in this context, metaphorically speaking, it's like constant. You're still hungry for more learning, for more doing, for more hustling, right? So I love that picture that it paints, right?
Yeah. And what's cool about a side hustle is even if it's unrelated to your job, sometimes there's skills you develop in your side hustle that make you more effective at your current job.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of cool. Basically the things that you develop, the skills that you develop in your side hustle translate to more productivity in your current job. So it's actually something in that sense that your employers might actually benefit from. Oftentimes employers can be a little bit uncomfortable about side hustles. They don't want their employees, focused on something that's not related to their job. But the truth is, if they sort of confront you about it, you can say, well, look, in this side hustle, I'm developing XYZ skills. I'm doing it in my own time, and they happen to make me more effective at this job for these reasons.
Yeah, you raise a really good point there, Greg, because a lot of people might scoff at that idea that, meaning be upset about it or kind of, deriding you or ridiculing you. Like, why are you focusing on that while you could be focusing on this, like the lucrative thing? Maybe because maybe the side hustle isn't at the point where it's lucrative yet, right? Where it's profitable yet. But that's separate from this in that, they might be scratching their heads and thinking, why are you doing this? But if you can make a case for how it's positively impacting your role and having you, do your job even better than you would had you not had this side hustle, even if it's just, making you happier and maybe having you look forward to your work. And if there's overlap, great. If not, then, you have your side hustle. And, we talked about this notion of like quiet quitting and why that's not a healthy standard, and it's by no means something that you should consider doing. It's more so have a side hustle that you're excited about so that you can really, just test the limits of what's possible within the realm of, your abilities and what you're going to learn about. So it's really about that exploration.
Yeah, I like how you compare this to quiet quitting, which we just discussed. And quiet quitting can be problematic for a lot of the reasons we did discuss. Yeah. A side hustle would be the alternative, right? Yeah. Instead of quiet quitting and just kind of checking out, develop a side hustle, get excited about that, and figure out where the overlap is with your current job. And that way, the two can have this sort of positive feedback. You also mentioned, of course, the revenue potential of a side hustle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is another important motivator for a side hustle, right? It is an opportunity to supplement your full-time job in terms of income, right? So if you're able to, in your off time, do something else that people value, you can charge for that. And then suddenly, not only you're making your full-time job's paycheck, you also have this side income. And that's great for just sort of supplementing your current income, but it's also sort of insurance, right?
Definitely.
If for some reason the company you work for shuts down or you get fired, who knows?
Or AI takes over and decides that your job is redundant.
Yep.
Right?
In that situation, you have something to fall back on. You have this other stream of income that could potentially get you to, it can help bridge the gap between this job and the next job. Or if it's really successful, you might be able to just make it your full-time job, right? You can transition to focusing full-time on that side hustle. So it's this nice piece of life insurance, you could call it.
Yeah.
That's also a huge advantage.
I love that idea because, you just never know what's around the corner. Like, it's good to keep a positive mindset and outlook on life, but the more skills that you can learn, the more, ability you have to pivot, that's going to enrich you so much, not only mentally and with your creativity and your work, but also in the case of, a plan B situation where you need some sort of fallback strategy. That's extremely powerful. And it just alleviates some of that pressure, right? That, I think a lot of us feel from time to time, and that's completely natural. When you're thinking about how to start a side hustle, I think one of the other good ways is to think about what your hobbies are, right? And think about what you're passionate about already. and then looking at what skills you might need to level up, right? To actually take that thing that's a hobby and then turn it in, slowly transform it into a side hustle. And there might be gaps, which of course there will be, and figuring out how to fill those gaps, right? Maybe it's about learning a little bit about accounting or how to file, you know, your tax returns, or right, something where you have to be on top of, if you're starting a company, you need to figure out how you're going to be doing that. But also it could be things like, learning how to copy edit, and thinking about, how do you put out a polished, piece of work, or how to make a video, right? Things like that, or how to learn how to edit videos.
Yeah,
right?
I like side hustles that are skills based,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Anything that involves learning a skill, because first of all, there are a lot of resources out there on developing these skills, and you can do them at your own pace in your off hours.
Yeah.
And then of course the skills themselves become monetizable, right? You can earn money from those skills once you develop them. And it's, that's certainly the approach that most people will take with their side hustle. For me, coding became my side hustle.
Yeah.
So I had never coded before. And while I was still at my previous job, in my off hours, I started learning how to code. And actually during my job, there were a few opportunities to also use the skills I was developing. So I could practice it there and talk to our developers and sort of bounce ideas off of them. And when I eventually left that job, I was able to just start coding full time, which was great. We actually built the websites for this channel and the Exploring channel and other channels, among many other things. So that's why I really like skills-based side hustles, because you're able to develop something that provides additional utility in a professional sense.
Absolutely. And those can be soft skills, those can be hard skills, but finding a way to apply these skills, and maybe even talking to your employer and say, look, I'm really interested in coding. Because you can, there are a lot of opportunities where there's professional development stipends, and a lot of companies want you to, take on stretch projects and try out new things, and, to help you maximize your full potential. And a lot of times they can be based on what your current job is, or it can be something where you are, walking into the unknown with that skill and you're having to learn it from scratch. So really playing around with this idea of, not being afraid to go out of your comfort zone and learning these skills that you'll need, and trying to think strategically about how can you apply this, right? In what ways? That could also be really beneficial as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so these are some great things to think about with side hustles. Do you have a side hustle? I'm really curious. I think Greg is too. It's fun to these days ask people, okay, so what's your 9 to 5? And then what's your side hustle, right? Because a lot of times, people can be super passionate about what they do for a living, which is great. But other times they, might be okay with it, but then their side hustle is really what excites them and gets them, to wake up in the morning, so to speak, metaphorically, right? But let us know what your side hustle is. And if you wanted to start a side hustle, what would that be? Share that with the community. We can all, learn from each other and grow in that way. And maybe it's something having to do with English, right? If that's the case, then brownie points to you, because, especially if it's not your first language, it's totally amazing to be doing that and to venture in that space. So good for you. And we're going to come back with another native English speaker conversation, as well as another lesson. So be sure that you're staying tuned for that. And don't forget to subscribe and follow and leave us a nice review. You can leave up to 5 stars. That really helps us out. And what it does is that it tells, the podcast universe to find this podcast and also follow it, because that way we can reach more people around the world, which is our goal, right? All right. So we're going to see you in the next one. Bye for now. And happy advanced English learning.